Okay, so today what we're going to be talking about is I'm going to be training you on how to train your students to take the ACT. Went to a workshop a couple weeks ago, and with all the juniors taking the ACT this year, it's very important that we, in our subject areas, give them the best possible chance to succeed on this ACT. And so I'm going to give you some strategies on how to train your students. So basically, I'm training you on how to train your students. This is something that Mr. Combs and Ms. McBride and myself and have come up with, and we believe that this is probably the best way to get your students to score well on the ACT. I'm going to be talking about the English portion a lot today because obviously that's what I teach, but adapt this PowerPoint, adapt this lesson today to fit your test. First thing, what should I teach them? Give them an outline of the test. Okay, let them know how many questions are going to be on the test and how many minutes they have to answer these questions. For example, English, they have 75 questions and they have 45 minutes to answer those questions. I know the first time I took the test, I had no idea, and I was really surprised by how little time we were given to answer all the questions, all the tests. Okay, so be sure they know how long they have for each test. Give them a pacing guide. How much time per question, how much time per section. I'm going to give you 3 different pacing guides to use depending on what level of student it is or how many times the student has taken the ACT. And last thing, give them types of questions. For English, there's only 2 types of questions. And I know in science there's 6 types, and in math and reading there's 4 or 5. But give them the types of questions that there's going to be on the test. Last thing, give them a goal to set for themselves. Not every student can have a goal of 35 or 36. It's just not realistic. So give them a goal. So I'm going to give you goals, how to reach those goals of 20, 23, 26, and 30 or above. But a student needs to have a goal to set for themselves because the pacing depends on the goal you set for yourself. Alright, so the test outline, okay, that could be something very simple like this. If you want to break it down into how many of each type of question, that would probably be better. You'll see that on the next slide. I've done that. It's pretty easy for English because there's only 2 types, but for science that might be a little bit harder. But from the English test, 75 questions, 5 passages and 15 questions per passage. I would probably go a little more in depth and talk about maybe the types of questions per passage. And I do that with my English students as well. I would do the same thing with your science, math, reading, whatever section you're going to be teaching, and then 45 minutes, obviously, for that section. All right, pacing. I give them 3 different pacing options. Okay, the first 2 are for students who are more advanced, or for maybe a little bit more experience with this test. Maybe they've taken it 2 or 3 times, and this one is for the first time test taker or for someone who didn't score very well the first time. So first pacing guide, 9 minutes per passage. They get 5 passages, so 9 times 5 is 45. That's a pretty good pacing guide, especially for that middle level, that intermediate student. Next one is for the upper level student. This is for the one that is going for that 30 or higher. 36 seconds per question. And 36 times 75 equals roughly 45 minutes. And so for that, they can they shouldn't be checking their watch every single 30 seconds, but they should have a pretty rough idea of where they are. This last one is that, like I said, that's for your kid that hasn't taken the test yet. After 22 minutes, students should be on question number 38. That's a very rough pacing guide, but it also lets them know if after 22 minutes, whoa, I'm only on question number 20, I got to get moving. So that gives them a really good idea of how quickly they need to move and where they should be at a certain point in the test. And like I said, give the beginning students the most basic option. That's option 3 in this case. And give the more advanced students the more advanced pacing options, options 1 and 2 in this case. Like I said, if they're going from anywhere from a 22 to a 27, I would give them the 9 minutes per passage. But if they're going for that 28 and above, maybe they've gotten a 26 and a 27 the first 2 times they took it, and they want to get that up to that 30, give them the 36 seconds per question pacing guide. That's something that they need to definitely keep in mind, because if they get to the end of the test and they have to fill in C on the last 10 questions, they've very little chance of getting that 30. Okay? Types of questions. And again, you're going to adapt this to your section. For English, 2 types of questions, 40 mechanics and usage questions, and then 35 vertical skills questions. Mechanics and usage are much easier. On your PowerPoint or on your lesson and teaching that you do for your kids, tell them which kinds of questions are easier. Tell them how to answer each question. Okay? The mechanics and usage, they cover basic grammar, sentence structure, and mechanics. Vertical skills are more difficult. It's about recognizing different literary skills. So again, I would cover the types of questions and then what each of those questions entail. Okay? Any questions on that? All right. Setting a goal. Okay, so here's something that they have to have in mind. To get, and this is for the English portion only, so this number over here, that's going to change depending on how many questions are on your test. But to get a 20, you must answer 44 to 46 questions out of 75. That's not very difficult to do, and students need to know that. A 20 is a pretty decent score. If they can answer 44 out of 75, a lot of kids think they have to get a 60 out of 75 to get a 20. Not even close. They can get a 44 out of 75, which is roughly a C-, and get a 20 on the English portion. To get a 23, they need to answer 53 or to 54 questions out of 75. To get a 26, they have to answer 60 to 61. And lastly, to get 30 or higher, they have to answer 67 or more questions correctly. Okay, so give them an idea on how many questions they have to get right to set the goals they want. And kids are going to know. They're going to know if they can get 67 out of 75. They're going to know if they can't get to that number, and they're going to set a more realistic goal for themselves. They're already going to have a goal in mind. So you don't really need to give them the goal. Say, Johnny, you need to set a goal for 23. They're going to have a goal in mind, but tell them how many questions they have to get right in order to get to that 23. All right. Last thing, adjust your pacing according to what your goal is. Tell them what their pacing should be. So, for example, I said 9 minutes per passage. Okay, to answer all 45 questions. That may be for a student who's trying to get a 26. Well, if they're just trying to get a 20, they don't necessarily have to answer all 75 questions. Maybe they just need to answer 60 questions, but answer those 60 questions well. So maybe I adjust that pacing to 10 minutes per passage or to 10 and a half minutes, whatever that math works out to be. And maybe they leave one passage for the end just to fill out seat on, and they really focus hard on those first 4 passages. Like I said, with about 10 minutes per passage and then the last 5 minutes on one passage. So adjust your pacing according to what your goal is. You're probably going to have, the students you're going to be training is going to be by group. So your lower level group adjusts their pacing to whatever you want them to get, and the lower level group should not have the same pacing as the higher level group. That should be very, very different. Any questions on setting a goal? Okay? And that's it. Okay, any questions overall on the PowerPoint in general?
Yeah, as a social studies teacher to kind of help support communication arts program, what are probably 2 or 3 things I can do with my sophomores and my junior class to help prepare them, just from getting from that 16, 18 range to over that 20? What are some of the things I can do to help support that?
So for the social studies, actually for the reading portion, there is a social sciences or social studies reading. And so doing cold reads with social studies classes, that really helps them just be exposed to that type of reading. Because a lot of times kids go on into that reading portion on the test, and obviously they're going to be unfamiliar to the passages, but they've never even seen that type of writing with the cold reads, with the type and what they're going to have to do. So just maybe doing a cold read maybe once a week with them and giving them the experience of reading that passage, and then maybe 5 multiple choice questions about that passage, maybe the purpose of the passage or something like that. That's going to be something that is really beneficial for them and just get them used to looking at things like that.
Okay. I enjoyed the presentation. Thanks.
Other questions?